After the Jay Swingler vs Nick LMAO fight, there were a lot of arguments online as to who actually won the match. Jay got the decision, but many people thought that Nick did enough to secure the victory. The truth is that it was a very close fight, and both guys should be proud of their performance, especially Nick, who was a massive underdog coming in. I didn't see anyone saying that he had a chance of winning before the event, and I'm glad that he got to prove everyone wrong. This controversial decision started a dialogue about the future of Misfits Boxing and the sanctioning body behind these events, the PBA or the Pro Boxing Association. First of all, a bit of background. The PBA have been involved with Misfits since the very first card in August, but their ties to influencer boxing go back to the Showstar event. For the w.a.d.e vs Alex Wasabi card, they had 2-minute rounds and bigger sized gloves. The card was under semi-pro rules, based on the criteria the PBA have laid out on their website. When it comes to Misfits Boxing, people thought that these fights would be fully professional bouts, but this is not the case. Misfits fights are technically still semi-pro, but they use professional rules and gear. 10-ounce gloves, no head guards, and 3-minute rounds. It's weird, I know, but how can this be the case? Well, in the PBA's boxing rulebook, 10-ounce gloves are only used in their semi-pro bouts under specific circumstances. I'm not sure what exactly these circumstances are, but in any case, Misfits are allowed to use 10-ounce gloves, and therefore simulate a professional fight. Fans have discussed the length of future Misfits main events, with them wanting KSI to fight at 8 or even 10 rounds. According to the PBA website though, they will not sanction those type of fights. Only bouts contested over 3-2s, 4-2s, 5-2s, 6-2s, 8-2s, 3-3s, 4-3s, 5-3s, and 6-3s. Just to be clear, they can also sanction 8 2-minute rounds, but I doubt that Misfits want to use 2-minute rounds, because there are no 2-minute rounds in pro fights. I'm not sure if the PBA can be a bit flexible on the length of these fights, so that Misfits can go up to 8 rounds like Jake Paul's recent fights, but it might be possible, who knows. Why do Misfits use the PBA to begin with and not the British Boxing Board of Control? Well, simply put, most of the fighters on the Misfits roster will not be able to get their pro license from the British Boxing Board of Control, so they have to use the PBA. The PBA puts on fights with pro rules, but they aren't fully professional fights that go on BoxRec. They are semi-pro bouts, as I've said, but Misfits have some sort of special permission, I guess, from the PBA to use 10-ounce gloves. KSI could probably obtain a proper boxing license, but that's probably it, and I imagine it would be a headache to use 2 different sanctioning bodies for a single event, with the undercard fighters and all of that. Misfits could always go to America and put on pro fights with one of their sanctioning bodies for their future events. However, Misfits and KSI's main audience is from the UK, so it wouldn't make any sense to have every future Misfits event in America. That being said, Misfits 3 was set in the USA, and for that event, an American commission got involved, and they're way less strict than the British Boxing Board of Control. With the KSI Jake Paul fight negotiations, both parties would have to come to some agreement in regards to the sanctioning body. Jake Paul would absolutely want the KSI bout to be on his pro record, which requires using the British Boxing Board of Control if the fight is in the UK, and it's going to be tricky to figure out all the logistics. The PBA has been a topic of criticism in the influencer boxing scene, but they are absolutely necessary, and I've laid out the reasons why. In fact, I'm glad that the PBA exists, and Misfits can operate with basically the same rule set as a pro fight in the UK. Influencers that are having a boxing fight for the very first time without an amateur background cannot get their pro license in the UK, so Misfits need to use the PBA or some other semi-pro sanctioning body to make these events happen. Why am I bringing up the PBA to begin with? Well, as Misfits grow more and more, it's important for fans to recognize who is behind their events. I commend what KSI and Mams have done in such a short space of time. Their deal with DAZN to distribute Misfits events for the long term is impressive, and I'm glad that something like this exists for crossover boxing. In a few years, I can see Misfits having a real foothold in the combat sports business. But being transparent about the sanctioning body and all of that is important as well. Even though Misfits is doing good work, there's always room to improve. People have criticized the PBA and Misfits for their dodgy scorecards. And I agree with what fans have been saying. The Faze Sensei vs King Kenny decision is the most iconic example of poor scoring, but there have been other questionable scorecards from the PBA. The Pineda vs w.a.d.e scorecard reads as follows: 30-27, 30-25, 30-25. With the winner being Pineda by unanimous decision. Even though Pineda should be the winner, these scores are bizarre to say the least. Pineda scored a knockdown in round 2, which means that the scorecard should read 30-26 and not 30-27. Maybe the judge scored one of the rounds a 10-10, but I failed to see any round being scored as a draw. The other scorecards count Pineda's knockdown, but they've also scored another round, I presume round 1, as a 10-8 for Pineda, making up the 30-25 scorecard. Even though the 10-8 without a knockdown score is rare, I do actually agree with round 1 being a 10-8. It was complete domination by Pineda. However, I don't want these 10-10, 10-8 without a knockdown scores being used too often. Ginty vs Hello Ham was 30-27, 30-27, 30-27, even though Ginty scored a knockdown. This means that one of the rounds was scored a 10-10, and it's just lazy judging in my opinion. If you're trying to emulate pro boxing rules with 10-ounce gloves and 3-minute rounds, then the PBA should also try their best to replicate the scoring criteria. How do you improve the PBA's judging? Misfits and Mams should make the scorecards for each fight public. That way we get some idea of what each particular judge is looking for in a fighter, and we also get a chance to discuss the scoring on social media. Misfits is a boxing promotion centered around influencers. The whole appeal of YouTube and internet culture to begin with is that these people are real, quote unquote, with their audience and aren't soulless corporations. So it makes sense to have open scorecards for 100% transparency. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is the commentary team. I feel like the perfect Misfits Boxing show team includes Ade Oladipo, who works on the DAZN events, the w.a.d.e concept, w.a.d.e, and a guest fighter from the Misfits stable. Whether it be King Kenny, Dean the Great, or Slim, just to round out the team with someone who's actually fighting on Misfits. Like I said before, Ade works for DAZN shows and he is an absolute professional. His presenting skills are top notch and he knows a ton about the pro boxing world. You guys don't need me to tell you why w.a.d.e is required on every single Misfits boxing event. He has the perfect blend of pro boxing and influencer boxing knowledge, and he's put out great work over the past few years. w.a.d.e is very real and genuine. He's not afraid to put his true opinions out, and I feel like you need that level of authenticity on the Misfit shows. Some fights might be absolutely shambolic, and having w.a.d.e point that out, in my opinion at least, invites you into the matchmaking and broadcast process. I know that Misfits want people to think that every fight is hype, but sometimes there are boring matchups like Ginty vs Hello Ham, and w.a.d.e being on air giving his unfiltered thoughts in the moment is important. Again, YouTube boxing has a certain level of authenticity that pro boxing lacks, and that's because influencers are running the show. w.a.d.e needs another crack at commentary for sure. I don't feel like I wasted my money when w.a.d.e pointed out how Pineda bottled it against KSI. It was refreshing to hear a commentator not blow smoke and talk about how it was actually a mismatch. The production itself is top notch, and it's a breath of fresh air compared to most other boxing promotions. On Showtime, for example, it takes so long to get into a fight. There's too much preamble and standing around. With Misfits on the other hand, there's a bit of banter from the commentary team, and then bam, we're into the next fight. No fucking around, I love it. Misfits is still a very young product with tons of room to grow. I do think it'll continue to be an absolute force in the combat sports space, and its potential is high. What do you think? Let me know, and I'll see you next time.